Okay, everybody, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. If it's your first time here at the COCA Staff Training Summit, welcome. And if you were here yesterday, thank you for returning. Tonight's session is called We Didn't Start the Fire. And before I introduce our speaker, Professor Dave Malter, I just want to again acknowledge and thank Care Camps for their support of our Staff Training Summit and our organization as a whole. And speaking of Care Camps, we are joined by Erica Lanter. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Erica.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Hi, everyone, and welcome. We are so happy to sponsor this event and just so grateful for our partnership with COCA. We wanted to let you know that we are in the final phases of reviewing all of our grant applications that we've gotten from the camps, and it's been so much fun learning about you guys and seeing where your needs are and your just finding out the ways that we can best support you. We will be distributing the grant funds in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. That's always an exciting time of year for us and for you. And with that, we just want to say thank you and let you know that we're here anytime if you need to reach out to me or Lexi or Gwen. And we just appreciate you guys and hope you have a fantastic webinar.
Thank you, Erica. And on behalf of everybody, thank you to Care Camps again for your support of COCA and all of our members. So welcome again to session 2. We didn't start the fire. It's my privilege to introduce our presenter for the Staff Training Summit and our speaker tonight, Professor Dave Malter, Director of the Camp Administration and Leadership Program at Gratz College. So Professor Dave, take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. Just give me 1 second to get my sharing up here now that I have permission. How's everybody doing? Everybody doing all right? Good to see you again. Actually, tonight I have my glasses, so I can actually see you all much more clearly. You're just as lovely as I thought you were last night, a little blurry. It's good to be back. Unfortunately, the title of the session is a misnomer. I will not be singing for you tonight. We'll be singing No, We Didn't Start I could, but I won't, to spare you. And just to give you a little more background, I realized I didn't really do this last night. For those of you I haven't met before, who haven't been at any of my sessions or anything, as Ryan so nicely said, my name is Dave. Sometimes I go by Professor Dave, and I have a lot of different roles. My main role is I do run a master's program in camp administration and leadership. Been doing that for about 12 or 13 years now. It's an online program through a local small college here in Philadelphia, where I live. I also work with AM Skyer, which some of you might be familiar with as one of the larger insurance companies in the camp world. I'm one of their partners, do a lot of educational work with them. I travel the country in June doing workshops. So I'll visit about 35 to 40 camps every summer, doing workshops in addition to doing some Professor Dave consulting in addition to all of that. So just wanted to give you a little more background. So we're going to talk tonight about being the boss, and which is really tough and really necessary. And what I'll do again tonight is just ask you to again put your name and what camp you're from and anything else you want to put in the chat so we all know who's in the room with us. And at any point, feel free to interrupt, raise your hand, throw something in the chat. Ryan's gonna pay attention for me, hopefully, and let me know if I need anything. But feel free to interrupt at any point, and let's get started. So we're gonna do another one of these great surveys that we did last night. We're just gonna do one tonight. But I want to start off just kind of getting us in the mindset of being the boss. And I want you to just share what your biggest challenge is. Now, if you're in Canada, I've learned that this didn't work for you last night, and I really apologize. It's nothing personal. I love Canada. I love all of you. If you can't text, feel free to put it in the chat, and hopefully people will read it. Or you can unmute and share live and in person. But the instructions are at the top of the page. It's really simple. It seemed to work last night. So we're crossing our fingers that it works tonight. And let's just share the biggest challenge you have of being the boss, just to get us in that mindset, in that frame of mind, thinking about this, and then we'll get to work. Meeting everyone's needs. Oh, somebody texted my name. All right. Imposter syndrome, having difficult conversations, juggling. I like the imposter syndrome. Being seen as a difficult boss. Everything. Okay, honesty, I like it. Good. All right, so that's a good start. I think most people would agree that these are all difficult parts of it, and hopefully tonight we'll work on some of that and help you out. So, oops, excuse me. Here's the roadmap for tonight, what we're going to be talking about. So, hopefully you got a chance to read the article that was sent as part of preparing for tonight. I hate to give you homework, but I think it's a really interesting article. I'm not going to directly, summarize or go into it, but I'm going to touch on a lot of those themes that Bruce Tolgan touches upon. He's a really great author, does a lot of great work in the leadership space. So I highly recommend that you read more if you're interested. But these are the ideas that we're going to look at and kind of in the general terms, because I think these are all important ways. The way I look at leadership or being the boss is how we manage our staff and how we take care of them and how they perceive us, and getting past some of the hurdles so we can move forward and communicate better and be more confident in the work that we're doing. So this is what we're gonna focus on for tonight, and hopefully you come away with a few tricks and tips and ideas, and again, learning that might be helpful for you. I don't expect you to, agree with everything. I hope you disagree with some of it or think of it in your own way. Hopefully some of this just sparks an idea in your mind as you're listening, as you're watching. So feel free to chime in. There'll be opportunities to do that. But this is what we'd like to talk about tonight. So let's demystify micromanagement a little bit. When you ask employees, when you ask staff what a micromanager is, this is kind of what you come up with, right? These are the characteristics of a micromanager. And the reason why I'm showing this to you is because the next piece I'm going to show you, it's really hard to be a boss or a manager without doing some of this. And sometimes it's misconceived that you're not being a micromanager, but your approach might come off as that of a micromanager, because all types of leadership have some element of these pieces in it, because somebody has to exercise control. Somebody has to be the authority. Somebody has to act as a bottleneck sometimes. I don't think that's a bad thing sometimes when there's ideas flying around, and maybe somebody does have to slow it down and maybe take a step back. So these are seen as negatives, but they're not always negatives. But this is how the perception is, and we have to respect that perception, and we have to react to it and figure out ways to work around that, and figure out ways to convince your staff that you're not really a micromanager, that what you're trying to do is build a culture of leadership, build a certain kind of vision, and speak in a certain way. So you start with kind of understanding what others are thinking about you. And this should come as no surprise that this has become what it is. And I think a lot of it is not understanding what management is, not understanding what micromanaging is. I think it's a term that's been overused and simplified, and doesn't necessarily have the meaning that maybe your staff think that it has. It has a really negative connotation, and it doesn't have to be. And it's a word that I'd like to get rid of. I don't know who invented it, but I would hope that maybe we could get rid of it, but it's probably too late to do that. When you look at leadership styles, right? These are 10 of the most common leadership styles. And all of you on this call have a piece of all of this in you. And at one point or another, lead in one way or another, all of these. All of us do all of this. But within each one of these are the elements of micromanagement that your staff have told us they don't like, right? That they don't like when people treat them this way or act this way or seem this way. So they want us to be leaders, and some people respond better to different types of leaders, but they also are saying that within that leadership, there's issues. So our goal is to still be leaders, to still decide how we're going to respond to certain situations, what our staff need, what individuals need in terms of leadership style. You're not going to treat everybody the same or every group the same, every person the same. Some people need more hands-off. Some people need more coaching. So it's really up to us to figure out what everybody needs. But they're also going to, because you're the boss, because you're the leader, there's going to be some negativity. It's built in. It's part of what this is all about. So we have to understand that and say, okay, this is the type of leader that I am. Maybe there's a few different types. I can turn this one off, turn this one on, and use pieces of one with the other, whatever it might be. And within that, how am I presenting this to my staff so they're feeling like I'm not a micromanager, that I'm not this bad person? And those are some of the skills that hopefully we can work on tonight. So the conflict really becomes, as a manager, is not giving clear expectations. So you'll see my amazing artwork here with an arrow that points to the area between 1 and 2. And it says, this is the conflict, because this is the major conflict. 3 and 4 are a problem, right? But for purposes of tonight, 1 and 2 and that middle point are really the issues. The issue becomes is you as a manager haven't set out what the expectations are. And because of that, you have to constantly remind people, talk to people, reinforce things that maybe you've never even enforced in the first place. Constantly on top of things, you're constantly worried, you're constantly stressed about somebody doing something right or wrong. And then that is perceived as this kind of micromanagement. So the conflict exists in the fact that we're not spending enough time laying out what our expectations are. So that's really the bulk of what I took from the Tolgan article when I first read it, whenever that was, and in reading his other books. This to me is really where the issue comes up, and not taking the time to say, here, laying it all out, right? I used that term last night in a different context about laying it on the table. Well, that's really the same thing. You have to be really clear, really upfront, really not hiding anything about what your expectations are in all areas of camp, in all areas of achievement, in whatever it might be. Because if you don't, you have no choice but to be perceived as a micromanager, excuse me. You have no choice, because that's how you will be perceived. Because when you're working from behind, when you haven't dealt with it up front, and you're working from behind, there's nothing else you can do. Even though it's not your intention, and we all know that, it's how it's going to come across. So I want you to keep this in mind as we keep moving through some of this. That to me, and the other two pieces are important. Although for those of you who work in a 1-week camp, I'm not sure how much you can foster development. I think you can to some extent. I think you're probably all really good about being available. It's kind of a skill that camp directors have. We're pretty good about being out and about, being upfront as much as we can, and being open and letting people know that. So really, to me, it comes down to these two pieces that are in conflict. And that's really what I want to focus on for the most part. So how to avoid micromanaging your team, because this is the big issue. And this lays it out pretty clearly. I think sometimes as camp directors, as an industry, it's nobody specific on this call, we are not very good about letting go. And I'm in there with you. We are good about having a vision, knowing how things want to work, and then taking care of it ourselves. That's what we do. And we're not so great about letting other people help. Now, the problem with that is that if you've hired somebody to do something, we should let them do it. We want to give them instructions. We want to lay out what our vision is, but let them do it, and let them roll with it, because that's what they're looking for. And It's going to open up time for you. It's going to de-stress you. It's going to make you a better manager. It's going to solve so many issues if you just let people do what they want. And I'm as guilty as anybody else. My very first summer as a assistant camp director, I worked with somebody that I've known since I was 7. So we've known each other a really long time. And my job as the assistant director, I was at a fairly large day camp. At that point, we had about 500, 600 kids and on 20 something acres. And my job at camp was to literally walk in circles and check everything, make sure arts and crafts was working well and music was working well in theater, and also looking at facility things and making sure lunch was ready. And, I just walked around camp in a circle all day long. And about, I don't know, a week or 2 in, my friend Gary, who was the director, called me into his office and said, "Dave, what is wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing, I'm fine. I'm just, doing my job." He said, "No, everybody," I'm going to use some salty language, "everybody keeps saying, like, why is Dave so pissed off all the time?" And I said, "I'm not, I'm fine." And he said, "Well, smile once in a while," right? He said, you can be stressed, but stressed with a smile. When you leave this office, just smile as you walk around. It's going to make a huge difference." And on top of that, I had to figure out a way to stop putting everything on me. So I had to think of a way to say, okay, arts and crafts or ceramics or whoever it is, I trust you. I know what you're supposed to be doing. I'm going to trust that you're doing it until you're not. I'm not going to walk around and peer over your shoulder and stress so much about the job that you're doing, because I've hired you. You know everything about arts and crafts. I know nothing about arts and crafts. I can't do anything. So you kind of have to, I had to really work on delegating and just letting people do their jobs. So I'm just as guilty, and it's something that I still work on in letting go of some things. Setting clear expectations, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but really letting people know what this is all about, what their job is, what the benchmarks are, what you need them to do. Perfect is never going to happen. It's camp. You'll hear that a lot. It's just camp. So you have to let go of it. And just, again, let people do their jobs, let kids have fun. Of course, there's medical piece to it where we have to be careful. As somebody who works for the insurance company, I am the risk management guy. They call me Insurance Dave when I do these workshops. So I get it. But sometimes we just have to let go of being perfect and just know that it's going to be okay. And that if something doesn't go exactly right, as long as nobody got hurt, we're going to be okay. And if somebody comes to you with an idea and they're being solution driven, that's a miracle. And you should embrace that and let them roll with it. You all spend a lot of time hiring, finding people to volunteer, and you have to make sure you're not sacrificing that just because you like somebody, they have a good personality, but you recognize that maybe they're not going to be great with kids. Maybe it's not somebody that you want at camp. And you have to be really careful. And even in the era where we're having a hard time finding people, and that's an issue across the industry, you have to make sure that you're not sacrificing quality and qualifications and what's best for camp and for your campers. And something that we'll talk a little bit more about is not just soliciting feedback, but giving feedback. So I'm going to tweak that last one just a little bit. It's really important that you evaluate. I talked about it last night, but you evaluate, you ask questions, you give people a vehicle, a way to give their own feedback, and then you're going to give feedback as well. And I'm going to get into that in just a little bit. So these are some beginning steps to think about how you're not going to be perceived as a micromanager, because it is all about that perception again. So this is some ways that you can move past that. Another piece of this, when we talk about it, is setting expectations and clarity. So there is real power in being clear, in giving directions, and taking the time to make sure that everybody understands what the goals are, what their role is, understanding what it entails, what the different pieces of it are. There's real power in that. I talk to a lot of camps about transparency. And a question I always ask people, and it's always curious to me, is we talk a lot about their job responsibilities. right? Everybody, I'm sure, has some sort of paperwork that talks about their job responsibilities. They do it on an interview, whatever the case may be. I'm just curious, raise your hand with the little button there if you see it. Raise your hand, because some of you don't have your cameras on, so I won't be able to see your actual hand. But raise your hand if anybody here shares what your responsibilities are in a public forum to everybody at camp during training. Tanya's my hero. So raise your hand if you do it. So far, Tanya's my hero. Oh, Norman Hilda do it. I'm looking. Hannah does it. All right, so this is Lynn does it. My friend from Canada, right? Oh, somebody unmuted. They really wanted to tell me that they do it. Julianne does it. Great. So for those of you who don't, let's skip ahead. It's really, when you're the camp director, as going back to this part of micromanagement that we looked at earlier, when you're the camp director, nobody knows what your day is like. Nobody has any idea. If they haven't worked at camp before, if they haven't been a camp director before, they haven't sat in that seat, they have no idea. They think you're just out playing basketball or gaga or hanging out with kids all day and life is groovy, right? It's not, and we all know that. So I'm going to give you a challenge this summer. Keep one day, just one day this summer, in a little journal on a little piece of paper. Write down what your day looks like. Just keep notes. What did you do all day? From when you get to camp to when the day is over. And then next summer, share that on a big screen in front of everybody else. And not as a way to prove what a hero you are, although you are all heroes, right? But to show them that you get it, that you get that this is hard, and being transparent. And this is what my day looks like. So if I don't talk to you every day, if sometimes I seem stressed or quick or whatever it might be, this is why. And they'll respect that. And they'll say, wow, I had no idea that Dave does all of this. I didn't know what he did. Right? He interviewed me. He seems like a nice guy, but I didn't know that this is what the job entails. He's really busy. He does a lot, and he still has time to talk to me and make sure that I'm okay. And it will change how they view you, how they view the position, and how they view camp. So I'm going to challenge you all to do that if you're not doing it already. Just pick a day and say, I'm gonna keep track of my day. Don't let it get you down though after you read it, because you're going to be surprised. Or just say, I am amazing that I'm able to do all of this in one day, because you're going to see that piece of paper and you're going to even surprise yourself. Being really transparent about what the expectations are, what the goals are, right? What are we trying to accomplish at this camp? What is our ultimate goal? What is our vision? What is our purpose? And making that kind of the funnel that everything else goes through. So again, being really clear about all of that is super important, and making sure that they understand the role. Sometimes when I go to camps, there's still this kind of misconception, I think, in my mind, and you might disagree, that counselors or staff are supposed to be there to be friends with campers. And that's really worrying in a lot of ways, because adults shouldn't be friends with children. And that's not only the risk management guy talking, that's just Dave talking. I think there's real problems in adults being friends. So you have to clarify what their roles really are and make sure they understand that their ultimate job is the safety and protection, both emotionally and physically, of these campers. That's their ultimate responsibility. And if it comes with tough love and changing what the boundaries are and being really clear about that, that's okay. You're not there to befriend them. You're there to protect them. And it can be done in a fun, productive way, but sometimes it's going to be not so fun. And you're going to have to make tough decisions and have tough conversations. So being super clear about that will help you down the line. And it has to be done up front. I would start it in the interview process, or however you go about finding people. Make that a big part of the conversation. You don't want there to be any surprises, and you don't want to have this conversation when it's a little bit too late. I'm going to pause. Any questions, comments? I'm going to check the chat. Okay, everybody's good. Great. I want you to think of creating a culture of ownership. Now, it sounds very philosophical and high level, but it's not. It's okay. And it's based off this idea called the accountability chain, right? So it's the idea of systems, ownership, and initiative in that order. So systems is basically how you create and communicate expectations. And that's you, right? You have to create these expectations of your staff and then communicate to them in a very clear, upfront way, and then hold each other accountable. So we're going to do an exercise in a little bit that I actually referred to last night about holding others accountable and holding each other accountable, and then holding camp accountable, right? It kind of grows. It's yourself, it's others, it's everybody. And it becomes this bigger piece. But it all comes down with this system of how you're going to create and communicate expectations. And then you have to convince your staff to take ownership of this and say, I'm gonna work here and commit to reaching the expectations that we've all agreed upon. Because by them being there, signing the contract, showing up, whatever it is, they've agreed that they're going to meet these expectations. It's a non-verbal, non-signature agreement. They've showed up and you've made the expectations clear. They've all gotten on board. They've all stayed. They've all showed up. Great. So now they have some ownership and they have to make the choice to own this and to move forward and to hold those expectations. That's up to them. And then initiative, right? It goes beyond just owning it. It's going that step further and saying, okay, now that I've made this commitment, right? Now that I've made this huge commitment to follow the expectations, to own them, I'm now committing to it and I'm going to deliver because that's what I've said I'm going to do. So I need to deliver on these expectations that I've agreed to, that I've taken ownership of, and that should be their goal. And this is something that you have to work on your staff with. It has to be intrinsic. There is no way that you can make them do it unless they believe in it and they want to do it for themselves and for their campers. You can't force it upon anybody. It has to come from within them. So I like to call it a culture of ownership. And it really comes down to how do we get people to take ownership of this and then take the initiative to do whatever it takes to meet these expectations within the framework that you've put together. Is that clear for everybody? Does that make sense? Everybody okay? All right. So earlier on, I wrote something in the roadmap that said, learn from your own mistakes is really bad. I think I wrote dangerous. Use whatever word you want, any negative word. That's not okay. That's not a staff member's job or anybody's job who's working for you to learn from their own mistakes. You have to teach them, or somebody has to teach them, whoever you're giving the job to. So whether it's you, another supervisor, whoever's in charge, right? Whoever you've delegated this to, maybe it is you, right? And there's some steps. And this could be a conversation. It doesn't have to come down from above, right? It could be a conversation, but you can't just say, you're going to learn from your mistakes, because they're not. Because if nobody ever calls them out, if nobody ever explains to them, if nobody helps them figure out what to do, how does anybody learn that way? We've all gone to school to some level, right? That's not how learning works. So it's a really dangerous cliche to say, learn from your mistakes. So if somebody makes a mistake and they don't meet those expectations that we talked about, and you have to address it with them, the idea is not to say, well, you're going to learn from this and then walk away. Have this conversation. So Dave, can you tell me what went wrong? Well, I put this rake on the ground and then a camper stepped on it and now they have a black eye and it looks like a cut on their forehead. Okay, well, that seems like it went wrong. Okay, well then can we shift your perspective a little bit? Why did this happen? Well, you know what? I really was just so busy and somebody said they needed something and I just walked away. I didn't even think about it. Oh, okay, that's understandable. That happens, right? So what did you learn from this? Well, I learned that I need to be more careful and I need to pay attention and I need to focus a little bit better, maybe. Okay. So what would you do next? Well, I really first have to apologize to this camper. They're in the health center. I should probably go apologize. And please don't make me talk to their parents because that's really embarrassing and I might cry if I have to talk to their parents. But I think maybe I have to figure out a way to handle stress a little bit better. Maybe that's something I need to work on as my next step. Oh, that's a really mature response. I'm really glad that you're thinking that way, that you understand those because you were under stress, you rushed through something. So maybe we just need to work, and maybe I can give you some resources about, managing your stress, or, taking a deep breath before you make a decision, or whatever it might be. And I can help you with that as your manager, as your supervisor. I want to help you get some more skills so something like this doesn't happen again. I don't think it will, because I think you've really learned from this. And then what that'll do is that down the line, you're not going to make this mistake again, and you probably won't make a lot of other mistakes, but you might, and that's okay. But as long as you go through this process and really think about what happened and how you can do better in the future. So that conversation took all of 2 minutes. It's not real life, obviously, but instead of just saying, you know what, Dave, you really have to learn from your mistakes, and we're going to send you home, or we're going to put you, in a different position. Well, that staff member is not going to learn from that. They're just going to walk away thinking all those bad things about you that I showed in that one of those opening slides. And that's not productive for anybody. And it's not fair, especially to your staff member. And it's really not fair to you because you're a better leader than that. You just need to take the time to do that. So instead of saying, learn from your own mistakes, let me help you learn from this mistake. Does that make sense for everybody? Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. So here's what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, if you want to humor me. So last night, for those of you who were on, I talked about this goal sheet that I do with staff. And I usually start it with leadership, management. And I have them do this exercise, and then I do it with staff. And this is talking about your goals, but it's deeper than goals. It's going a little bit further than that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to practice this a little bit for you, with you. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to leave this up on the screen, and I want you to take just a few minutes. Now, normally I would say 3, but for the sake of this timing, if you get to 3, great, 3 of each, right? You'll see, but I took that out because we just don't have time right now. So think about these questions, write down some notes, and then we'll do a little bit of an exercise with it. So take a few minutes and answer these questions for yourself. And then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay? Any questions about that? About the instructions? And then when you're done, if everybody can just raise their hand on Zoom. And if you don't know where that is, let me know. But when you're done, just raise your hand so I know everybody's done. No rush, we have time. But when you're done, please raise your hand. And hopefully you can read it okay. I tried to get a little fancy with the font colors there. And you notice this is the assumption that this is a 1-week camp, but obviously apply it to your own experience. All right, so we got a few people finishing up. Great. Take a couple more minutes. Leave your hands up if you don't mind. And once we have a few more people done, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a few minutes. Another big surprise coming. Keep you on your toes. I'm just going to wait for a few more people. 5. All right, the goal is to get half the room, so we're close. Need about 2 more people. And then you can keep working, don't worry. If you want to snap a photo of the screen, if that helps you. So you have it. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Don't worry, I'll come back later. And oh, you know what? I didn't tell the group ahead of time that I wanted to do this. So this is my fault that there are no breakout rooms. Or maybe there are, but I'm not the host, so I can't do it. Ryan, help me out here.
I'm also not the host, but I think we'll
Oh,
be
who's
able
the
to
host?
get it done.
Who's hosting? Oh, Jennifer's the host.
Yeah, I'm the host.
Are there breakout rooms available? On the
Yes.
bottom there?
Yes.
All right, so Jennifer, will you just do me a favor? So here's what I'm gonna do, everybody. In just a moment, Jennifer's gonna help me with this. We're gonna put you in breakout rooms of 3 people randomly. And just spend a few minutes talking about your goals. That's okay, Norma, don't worry about it. You're gonna do just a few minutes of talking about some of these goals with whoever you're in your breakout room with. You have about 3 to 5 minutes to talk about it. We're just going to put you in random groupings. And this is how we would do it at camp, except at camp, you would do it with people who might be working in the same area, right? And sharing goals with each other and talking about it and having a conversation. So this is the next step in what would be a longer process if we were doing this in real life. So you'd give them a little more time, but for this exercise, we shortened it a little bit. So just spend a few minutes sharing what some of your goals are. And just to see kind of how that feels, and it's nice to share. So Jennifer, are you ready?
How many rooms?
Let's do 5 rooms and see how that breaks out.
Okay, ready?
Ready. And we'll call you back when we're ready. So put a 5-minute timer on.
Okay, that's good. That's good. You're gonna
Did it
go
work?
do you want to go into a room or you want to, Dave?
Yeah, I'll go. If you want me to
Okay.
go into a room,
Okay.
I'll be
Okay.
nice.
Here we go.
I'll behave.
Hello. It's just me and Crystal. Oh. Thank
Some
you.
people left altogether.
I know, I
Did
think,
Did I offend people?
no,
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 they didn't want to talk to each other.
maybe not.
I thought it was fun, but
I hadn't done breakout rooms in a while, so I was like, uh-oh,
sorry, I
no.
should have.
It
It worked though.
works
That's fine.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's like 3, we have one room with 2 people, but yeah.
That's probably because I just left. Yeah. You want to give them like one more minute?
Yeah, sure. These are great questions, by the way.
Thanks.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
They've been honed over the years.
very good.
Hopefully they're getting where I'm coming from.
I'm sure they get it. They should. We've got some of the people that are on this call tonight are, you know, run year-round programs, you know.
This is great for them then. I mean, they
Yeah.
have the time to do this kind of stuff.
And our programming, camp directors, senior staff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I just wish more people had joined, but they'll watch
Maybe.
the recording.
Yeah. All right.
You tell me when and I'll close all the.
Yeah, let's bring them back
Okay.
and then I'll reshare. Oops.
Closes in less than a minute.
Perfect. Something I really don't like about Zoom when you're presenting is you're limited in what you can do in Zoom while your PowerPoint is, you know what I mean? When it's full screen,
Yes, yes,
it really annoys me.
I do know. And what happens with my computer is it'll lock up if I'm presenting
Mm,
and then I can't do anything.
that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, 10 seconds, 9, 8.
Perfect. All right. Everybody's back. Okay, so hopefully that was fun. I got to know Deb, which was very nice. I already knew Ryan, so that wasn't so exciting. Oh, he's a nice guy, but I know him already. Deb was fun though. We didn't meet her dog, but we heard her dog. Much like my dogs, if anybody comes anywhere near the house, my dogs let them know it's not okay. So hopefully this was a good experience for you. Before I kind of explain why I did this, anybody want to share some of their goals with the bigger group? Or if you don't want to share your personal goals, do you want to share what this experience was like and how you can see this using this at camp? So I'll give you 2 options. So you don't have to share your own personal, but maybe just feedback on the questions, how you can see yourself using this, that sort of thing. If not, we have about 15 minutes, we can just stare at each other.
Well, this is Lynn
Hey.
from Special Days.
Hi.
Hey, I do more the medical orientation component. And at first I thought, well, I'm not sure this is going to fit with the medical orientation. But one of the things I've said to a number of people, because Special Days is 44 years old, those poor kids have heard me for years, on and on and on and over and over and over. And so I'm trying to make it new and fresh and fun. And I actually think this may be something that I can incorporate into the medical orientation, because there's some things the younger kids today, I'm looking, that's a whole bunch of you guys, since I can be most of your moms, but there isn't as much babysitting. And some of the things that I grew up with that was very normal, like body fluids, scares some of our staff to death, even, you know, providing gloves and talking about universal precautions and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is something I could weave in to my medical component of the orientation, about trying some things that you may be uncomfortable with and stretching a little bit, and you know, what are your fears? And so I'm excited. It didn't exactly feel like a square peg in a round hole when I first started, but the more I play with it a little bit, the more I think it'll be fresh and new. And
Oh,
then we
that's
can
great.
weave it into those kind of goals that we do, because we do goal setting certainly, for the general orientation and training. So I think it's kind of neat that we'll be able to weave that.
So I can add medical staff trainer to my resume. Is that what you're saying then?
There you go. Sure.
All right, look at that, a new skill today. That's great. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's a wonderful way to look at it. Thank you. Anybody else want to share?
I'll share. I'm Tanya from the Good Times Project.
Hey, Tanya.
I actually feel like it took pressure off, like just admitting some of these things or vocalizing some of these things, like made it feel more normalized. Like, hey, other people have these same things. If I just say it out loud, it just made me feel better, honestly. So thanks.
That's great. And that's part of this, right? I don't think we spend enough time asking people how they're feeling because we feel rushed or whatever it might be. And this doesn't take very long. So we talked about what are the key parts. Last night was all about what are the important pieces. And if you can find 10 minutes to do this, it's a really good 10 minutes. And could pay off in lots of different ways. So I appreciate that, Tanya. Thank you. Anybody? One more contribution from the group. Anybody? I know I'm that professor.
I can go. So I'm Alex with Camp COCA-I, and one thing that this kind of the conversations yesterday and the conversation so far is I stepped into the camp director role new to the organization last year, and this is our second year back after 3 years of COVID and a fire that took out our site. So there's been a lot of change going on in our organization, but our volunteer base and our camper base has stayed pretty consistent throughout, and just kind of being transparent about personal goals or what we're looking to do with our organization as we're entering this new era is so important to get just more buy-in from our volunteer base and our camper base, and just kind of create more open conversations about these things, because it is a lot of the things of working together in this team, even though a lot of the decisions come from myself or the full-time staff, it impacts them just as much, if not more. So just having those open lines of communication is just so important.
That's great, Alex. Good luck this summer. I'm sure it'll be great. Before I move forward, first, thank you, Jennifer, for the breakout room assistance. I appreciate it. Well done. It's always good to have a good tech person at your Zoom. So, there's real power in this. And, sometimes when I've been doing this for a few years now, because it started off as a feedback issue for me. I don't know if anybody remembers the movie Whiplash. If anybody ever saw that movie, it's with the guy from the Allstate commercials, the famous actor, bald head, glasses. And I was a drummer growing up, and he's a drum teacher at a private music, or a conductor at a private music academy. And the famous guy from Top Gun who does the dance, Goose, his son, plays a drummer, a student in this movie, and he's struggling. And at some point, J.K. Simmons is the teacher's name. He says to Miles Teller, who plays the drummer, "Good job" are the two most dangerous words in the English language. And I was watching this movie by myself here in Philadelphia in the middle of a snowstorm. There's a small independent movie theater just a few blocks away. And I immediately I almost left the theater. I'm I've got to go put together a session about this, right? It just rang so true to me. At the time, I was still a director at a camp, or just leaving, or whatever the case was, or was a head counselor. And I started talking about how, and I spoke to this last night a little bit. We walk around talking about, how you doing? Okay, I'm fine. We're saying to everybody, good job. Alex, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. That has no meaning. And it's also really hard to think about something else to say. So I use this for all the reasons that the three people who contributed and everybody else, I'm sure, was thinking of other ways. In those ways also, right? It's transparency. It's making people feel like their voice is heard. It's helping talk about things in a different way. It's vocalizing and taking some of the stress out of it, because now you realize there's other people in the room who have those same things. But then you keep it. And as you're walking around your camp and you go up to Alex and you say, "So Alex, I remember when we talked about your goals. you had this fear about getting everybody back on board after these last couple of rough summers. How's that going for you? Now, first of all, Alex is going to be, oh my gosh, Dave remembered like and cares enough to ask me. I mean, that in itself is mind blowing, right, for them, because they don't expect that. It's never happened. Nobody at their real job is really asking them those kind of questions. And then they can tell you. And then when they're like, well, it's really tough and it's not going that well, just like that last slide about mistakes, you can then engage in a way of helping them. It's that simple. But that, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the shoulder, right? This is not like, inventing the wheel or anything. But it's a different way of approaching feedback, communication, making people feel special in some way, which is really important these days. So it adds a lot to how you're going to manage your staff. And the other piece of it is it goes back to this idea of setting clear expectations, because that's really a misnomer. Setting clear expectations doesn't stop at setting expectations. There are all these components to it. And one of them is constant and concise feedback. It's the world we live in. We live in an age of constant feedback. Jennifer will tell you that I am like this also. I need to know how I did before we hang up tonight. Give me the good, give me the bad. Drives her crazy, right? She'll tell you. But that's the world we live in. We're used to that. The expectations are that way. And for some reason at camp, it's even more amplified. Maybe because it's a smaller environment, it's more concentrated, it's shorter, whatever it might be. And using a tool like I just shared with you allows you to do that. And it doesn't make you a micromanager. It makes you one of those other management types, right? That really cares, that's really concerned about people. And you've set forth these expectations, and asking those types of questions go along with the expectations that you're setting for your camp. So it all kind of works together. And it gives you this great tool, or your supervisors. A lot of camp directors will give their supervisors the power to do this, and then they hold on to them. And the supervisors use this as constant feedback. Because at any point, you can go up to anybody, go up to Tanya at any point, any day, pull out this little goal sheet, or memorize one if you don't want to make it look like you're reading off the paper, and say, how's this going for you? How can I support you? And it just takes the pressure off of you, that supervisor, and absolutely the employee, the staff member. So that's where I went with that. For those of you who stuck with me, I appreciate it, that you let me get there. So again, this idea of clarity. And as you're developing your staff trainings, here's some things to think about, right? As you're developing these trainings and making things clear and then going forward. So common purpose. Why are we here? Why does this rule matter? Why do we have to have a rule of 3, right? Why do we have to be at lunch on time? Whatever the why is, okay? Why do I have to hand you a physical form? Whatever the question is, right? But as you're thinking about staff training, why do things matter? And then what does success look like? If I'm going to be here for a week or however long you're going to be there for, at the end of that time, what do I want success to look like? What do I think? Is it a certain number on a survey? Is it smiles on kids' faces? Is it, a percentage of injuries? I don't know. That's up for you to decide. But decide for yourself what success looks like and communicate that in terms of expectations. And then coaching and collaboration. I talked a lot about that tonight. That last piece is really all about coaching and collaboration. How's it going? What do we need to know differently? Can I help you learn from your mistakes? Asking those kind of questions. And then there have to be consequences. Some are positive, some are negative. And this is all baked in. This is all part of your staff training, making it clear this is how it's going to go. Here are the different pieces that we're going to try and uphold on our end as leadership and give to you. We're going to tell you why. We're going to tell you what it looks like. We're going to set you up to be successful. We're going to ask you how it's going, and then we're going to help you learn either positively or negatively from whatever it is you're doing. That's your guarantee to them. And they're going to say, wow, like that's nobody in another workplace has ever done that for me. Right? They've given me a job description and a computer, and they said, go do it. And if you don't hit some metric that you're not really sure what that metric is, you get fired. Not a lot of intervention, not a lot of opportunity, especially when unemployment rates are 3 point whatever. Right? There's people waiting in the wings. So as you're thinking about staff training, thinking about how you can make each of these steps clear for your staff and how you're going to support them. So here are my key takeaways. Those of you who know me by now know that this is a very important piece of every one of my presentations. And there's almost always 7 of them. For those of you who don't know, I'm a New Yorker. So Mickey Mantle was my favorite baseball player, is my favorite baseball player, number 7. Sorry for all the non-Yankees fans. For a lot of different reasons, I'm sorry for you. But no, I'm just kidding. I love everybody. So remember, you are not a micromanager, no matter what they think. And you might have to explain why, right? Share with them. This is the real definition of a micromanager. It's kind of a made up word. It doesn't mean anything. It's not who I am. This is the type of person that I am. This is the type of manager that I am, type of supervisor I want to be, and how I'm going to treat you. Staff thrive on clarity and a shared direction. So if everybody's in it together, I think I made it pretty clear that learning from your mistakes is not a good way to do things. This idea of using goals and really asking them their own goals, sharing your own even, imagine that, right? For feedback, for your own management, get to know people better, show them what success looks like. Make sure that if you promise that you're going to talk to them about something, that you actually talk to them about it, or that if you promise them something, you come through with it. And then always remember that this is a constant work in progress. Nobody is the perfect manager. Even people like Bruce Tolgan who write books and make money off of it, they're not. It's why he keeps writing books and keeps writing articles, because there's always more to learn. There's always lessons to be learned. There's always ways to adjust and think, and you just have to be willing to put in that work. So those are my takeaways. And thank you. And Lynn, I'm excited you have a cat named after Mickey Mantle. Even though I'm not a huge cat fan, the Mickey Mantle portion of it makes up for it. So there you go. So that was good. Thank you very much for participating, to playing along. I appreciate it. Made you do a little extra work in that one. I hope it was helpful. So we still have some time. Look at that, right on the dot. So still about 10, 15 minutes. If there are any questions, comments. If not, we can all eat dinner.
So I missed the very beginning because I was coming from another meeting, but who is the author you were referring to?
So the name, I can put it in the chat. Bruce Tolgan. And there was an article that was sent out. It's fine. I just don't have the link handy to that article, but we'll get it to you. It'll be in the show notes.
Okay, thank you.
As they say in the podcast world. But he writes a lot about leadership, management style. Really great. You can just type in Bruce Tolgan in Google, and lots of good stuff will come up. I get no residuals for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, thank you, Ryan. Ryan put the link into the article that this session was loosely based on, the loose adaptation. Anybody have any questions, comments, additions, subtractions? I think Dave is clapping, which is always nice. I'll take an animated emoji clap.
Yeah, sorry, my phone camera is busted, and so I can't be on video.
No,
it bugs me when other people do
it.
that. But at least wanted to show you some visuals.
Thank you. All right. I've left you with lots to think about, hopefully. we'll get the presentation out to you as well, so you have all this information. Feel free to use that goal sheet. If you have questions, shoot me an email. And hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow night for our last in this series. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Dave.
Thanks again.
Have a good night.
Great job, Dave.
Thanks, Jennifer. Great job. The breakout rooms were perfect.